This is Cultural Environmental Relationships with information gathered from Mann and Denevan. In After 1492, Nature Rebounds, Denevan speaks about the landscape of America after the Native Americans were forced off their land. It seems to not make itself clear that there was damage to native species populations due to overhunting. Denevan uses his writing to explain the reforestation and repopulation of hunting species after the land was vacated by humans. Along the coasts were high concentrations of Native American societies, which led to deforestation in order to make room for the occupation of the territory. On the left you can see the reforestation surrounding the societies, and on the right you can see the reforestation that the absence of humanity allowed to happen. There were societies such as those in California who completely depended on game for their protein, and those societies drove the species they hunted to very small numbers. After the humans were drove out of the territories, the species that were hunted were able to bounce back in numbers. You can see here the return of not only cattle, which was one of the species hunted, but also the return of the longleaf pine belt in coastal prairies. There weren't just societies that completely relied on animals for protein. There were societies that cultivated the land or allowed for recovery by resting hunting zones intentionally. Unlike Californian populations, most pre-European Native Americans were productive farmers, and crops like maize and beans would replace any lacking protein from reduced game. In 1491, Mann talks about how the populations of indigenous peoples had been greatly underestimated. It was evident that there were populations by the modified earthworks like you see here, but what was not evident was just how great those populations were. There are people arguing both sides, but more and more people are joining the side that say that there was greater population before Europeans arrived to colonize. When Hernando de Soto went to North America, he took 300 pigs with him. This was the worst thing that they did. Europeans had domesticated pigs, but the Native Americans did not, and had not developed an immunity to the diseases they carried. This, coupled with the fact that the pigs multiplied rapidly and were able to transmit their disease to wildlife in the area, triggered what is an estimated 95% death rate. So as De Soto went through North America, his pigs reproduced, and they left their diseases with the nearby wildlife, who spread their diseases to other wildlife, who spread their diseases to Native Americans, who wasn't aware of how to treat these diseases, and instead of separation, they sat by the bed of their loved ones who were sick and went with a shaman to pray for their loved ones. And that just helped the spread of the diseases, and that basically just decimated populations.